Is it going?
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
I was going to start with do 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 do. Hi, everybody.
Welcome back to Historia.
Today is a re-record, and my name is Kylie.
I am Jamie.
We're recording an episode that we did. It was episode 4.
Was it? I thought it was episode 2.
Episode 4.
What was 2?
Episode 2 was the bombshells, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, shit.
So, oh my god, look at all these eps.
Literally.
Yeah, episode 2 was bombshells.
Ah.
And so was episode 3. We split those into 2 episodes, but not Disney. So, if you've been an OG, you know that our Disney episode, which talked about Walt Disney and Disneyland, was 2 hours and 15 minutes long.
That's so fucking long.
And we're re-recording a lot of our old episodes because they sound really bad.
And it's a good way for us to like find new information as it's come, or we've really improved, I feel like, our research game since then.
Guys, I was listening to that episode just to like hear it. First of all, the dogs wouldn't shut up in the background.
Oh my god.
My dogs were freaking out the whole time because they could hear the dogs. I was like, Harley, you're barking at yourself, technically.
I know. Her and Layla would go so hard.
Yeah, we were like recording in the living room and had these little tiny mics.
Literally.
We had nothing to trap the sound, and then the dogs would just play.
Dude, it was wild. It was
anyway,
a wild time.
It's a lot better now.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make 2 parts now.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start off with Walt Disney, and I'm going to be covering him again, and then Jamie's going to do Disneyland next time. So exciting stuff, honestly.
I love it.
We love Disney.
I know. I went in the beginning of February with my sister because she asked me when I was in New York, and I said, sure, why not? So we planned it in 2 months.
I love it.
So Disney World 2025, though.
I went the last 2 years, and now I'm like sad that I'm not going this year, but definitely next year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Disney World, 100%, baby.
Yep. I totally agree. So, are we ready to talk about the man?
Let's do
of it all?
The man, the myth, the legend.
Walt Disney.
Oh god, we're still cringy.
So I actually have my OG notes. But I did have to edit a lot of them because I was like, what does that say? So I made sure to go through and like see if everything made sense. And I had to change a few things. And then I also added a lot of information. So my OG information came from a documentary. I didn't even mention it in that episode, but it was called The Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, The Futurism of Walt Disney. It's like a 2-hour long documentary. I watched that whole thing.
Big beautiful tomorrow. As you can tell, we're Disney adults.
Yes. Oh, love it. Also, Imagineering is a pretty good show. I only used a little bit of information from it, but I've been watching it. So
that was pretty good.
And then biography.com. Classic.
Love it.
So, but yeah, most of it came from that documentary. And just documentaries I've seen. I've seen a lot of on him. So a lot of it was just like, I know that about him. Let's write it down. Which is kind of embarrassing, but it's fine. Okay.
I feel like we're not the worst of Disney adults. There's some that I'm just, even me, I'm like, that's a lot.
True.
I feel like we're the mild, like, we're entertainer.
That's
ones.
true. It's not like we're like, we have to collect all the pins and all the
lounge
everything.
flies.
Yeah. God, that would be expensive.
Yeah. Well, I like getting a pin every time I go.
Yeah.
That's like my go thing. Like I have to find one. Like the last one that I got was a Tiana one. It was like, it's a limited edition. I only found it at one trade post and it was outside of Disneyland. Mm-hmm. It was like on one of those just side ones in downtown Disney.
Yeah.
And as soon as I found it, I was like, that's the one. It's great.
Some people have to get like every single one. And it's just like, that's a lot.
Or the collective ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're definitely not that crazy. But do I want to go to Disney every year?
100%. Yeah.
All right. And if you don't understand why, it's probably because you haven't gone in a long time and you need to just go.
I'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
Since I'll be
That one
covering
may not
the park.
convince you that much. It's gotten better, though. All right. So the wonderful man named Walt was born on December 5th, 1901 in Chicago. He was born to Flora. She's a German American. And Elias, he's an Irish Canadian. So that's
Irish
fun.
Canadian.
Yeah, in a house that their father constructed with his own hands. Do you remember Elias? Mm-hmm. Doing all kinds of shit, moving all the time.
Literally.
Yep. Here to
I
refresh your
like that
memory.
name.
Yeah, that's a cool name.
Elias.
I like Flora too.
Flora.
I love the like old-fashioned names. But
Flora
not like...
is one of the fairy...
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah, you said that in the last one.
Did I?
Yeah, you were like, oh my god, Sleeping Beauty.
Oh my god.
That's so funny. I didn't listen to the whole episode because eventually I was like, all right, I'm good. But I listened to the beginning. So Elias started off as a contractor, but you'll see he switches jobs quite a lot, and he built homes and a church. So he was just doing all kinds of things.
Legit.
Then, when Walt was 4 years old, they moved to Marceline, Missouri, to a farm, the little farmhouse, which is cute. There was too much crime in Chicago. They were stressed about it, having kids, growing up in Chicago. Not always the best idea.
A lot of gangstas.
Yeah. You know what I noticed when you were doing Amelia Earhart? A lot of places you said are also in his story.
I mean, it makes sense. Those
Yeah.
were very common places to move to.
Yeah. Anyway, they were a good family growing up. Flora was super fun, loved all her kids, constantly involved in their lives. She loved to tell them stories. She really sparked his creativity and imagination from the beginning. And Walt had 3 older brothers, Herbert, Raymond, and Roy. At 2 years old, his mother had Ruth as well. So there were 5 of them altogether.
Dang.
Yeah. Elias would use beatings to correct his kids' behaviors, and Flora soothed them with nightly reads of fairy tales. So obviously he wasn't always showing them love, but his mom was at least.
Mm-hmm.
So
Very common for that time.
yes. The 2 eldest sons left home, and the sons grew up and worked in a farm. Disney would make sketches of the farm animals or make up games with the animals. So he really had to use his imagination. You couldn't just give him an iPad like you can nowadays.
Nope.
He had to actually look around outside. And then Elias came down with typhoid fever, which is a bacterial disease, and he recovered, but he couldn't farm anymore. During this time, Walt grew a really big passion for drawing, painting, selling pictures to neighbors and friends. So all kinds of little passions that he was starting to put into play. And Walt was put to work for the first time in Kansas City when the family moved there in 1911. They basically moved there so that they could have a bigger house since their family was a little big and it was hard for the brothers to share rooms, which makes sense. So Elias actually ended up purchasing a newspaper route and counted on the sons to help. Walt was only 9 or 10 at this time, but this was his first official job.
Oh.
So he had a good time.
Well.
But he didn't have time for school, unfortunately, because he was so busy with his newspaper route. And he wasn't really a great student. He was really good at reading, but he wasn't good at really anything else.
No.
Like nothing else really made sense to him. It was just like his brain couldn't make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And it makes sense if he's missed a lot of school and he's moved so much and it's kind of hard to have a consistent education.
It's tough.
Yeah, definitely. So Walt grew a fascination for trains. His uncle Mike Martin was a train engineer who worked a route between Iowa and Missouri. So he would later go on to work a summer job as a railroad assistant who basically sold snacks and newspapers. And so he just like has always been fascinated by trains and things that move and transport you to places. Yep. During this time, he met a boy named Walt Pfeiffer. So this was the other Walt. And he went to shows at the cinema with him all the time. They were like besties. They loved talking about the movies at the cinema. And they would study the acts and memorize the lines. Again, during this time, it was silent films. So When we say memorize the lines, it's movement, body movement. They're not actually talking. Very different than what we see now. But he was just so infatuated by actors being able to tell a story without words. And so they would just talk about it. So he was inspired by this, and he developed a love for an amusement park called Electric Park, which had 100,000 electric lights illuminating on a roller coaster. There was a dime museum, a penny arcade, swimming pool, and a light show. And this is where he was like, whoa, this place is magical. It sounds pretty cool. So he was inspired by not only the films that he was seeing, but also this amusement park and different amusement parks he went to. And he was like, dang, these things are really cool. How can we kind of combine them? And that's what leads to it later. But that's where he's at right now. Now, he may not have been very good at school, but he was good at art. So in art class, he would draw flowers with human hands and faces.
Guys started young.
Just picture that, guys. You can look up a picture because there's drawings. You can see. Like flowers with human hands. All right. And then, I still can't find any more information on this. Years later, he stepped on a nail and he spent 2 weeks in bed healing.
I guess whatever rust or anything that's on it, or like that like went into his foot, probably got it infected.
Yeah.
So that's probably why.
Was it on the railroad?
I'm assuming, or whatever he was doing. I mean, there's probably random shit laying around everywhere.
Yeah. So it took him 2 weeks to heal. And during that time when he was bedridden, he just drew cartoons all day. Iconic. And Elias is over here still selling the newspaper route. So in 1917, he bought a partnership in the Ozell Jelly Factory in Chicago. And he moved Flora, Ruth, and Walt with him. So they're back to Chicago. And Roy was in the U.S. Navy at this time. And so that kind of inspired Walt to be like, oh, maybe I should join the military. That'd be great. But he wanted to do something with art as well. So he's kind of just like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And he became an artist for his high school paper at this time. His high school was named McKinley High in Chicago. And he just had that natural artistic talent. All the teachers were like, oh, you're so great at this, Walt. Like, they just loved his art. So he was, like, known to be, like, the art kid at the school. Like, we had one in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always that kid that's really good at art.
I think I know who you're talking about.
So he wanted to go to art classes in the evenings because he was like, I'm ready for more and not just, like, simple art classes in school. So to pay for these art classes, it was at the Chicago Academy of Fine Arts, he washed jelly jars at the factory. So that was like his little part-time job. And then he was like, okay, I think I should join my brother who's fighting in World War I right now. And so he's like, I'm going to join the army. Let's do it. He was too young. He was only 16 at the time. He thought he would be able to lie about his age. Didn't work out. But nonetheless, he dropped out of school. Because he was like, I don't need school.
Oh, wow.
I can just be an artist or like, somehow be in the military. Yeah. So he ended up joining the Red Cross Ambulance Corps, and he lied about his birth year because he had to be 17. They didn't catch him this time.
Wow.
So his job with this is obviously he drove ambulances, but he helped with a lot of post-war operations in France, and he made deliveries and drove soldiers around as well. He also took up smoking during this time because everyone else was.
Common thing to do.
Yeah. And this would lead him to be addicted until the day he dies. During this time, although he's focused on his new career, he was also sending his drawings to magazines. They were all getting rejected because his drawings were a little bit out there. Different than what they expect, The human hands.
Yeah.
So in September of 1919, Walt returned home, and he went to Kansas City to become a newspaper artist. That's kind of a fun job. It's kind of like, I guess, comics.
Yeah.
That's what I assume. But he ended up living with his parents, brothers, and his brother's 5 kids. But his brother Ray actually ended up helping him get a job as a commercial artist at the Pressman Rubin studio in Kansas City. And this is where he met and became friends with fellow artist Ube Iwerks. And they became like 2 of a kind.
Oh.
During this time, they actually focused on making commercials based on cutout animations. So they would like make little animations, cut them out, and then like act them out.
Oh, yeah.
As little commercials, which is really cute. But unfortunately, they were both laid off in January of 1920. So they decided, let's form our own company. So it was the Iwerks Disney Commercial Artists. So Iwerks and Walt kind of coming together. Mm-hmm. They were barely making any money. And due to a lack of clients, they only lasted a month, unfortunately. But they didn't stop there. So the duo got a job at the Kansas City Film Ad Company as cartoonists. And they made a lot of commercials for movies. So back in the day, you didn't have these extravagant trailers before movies. It was more so just like little commercials.
That and propaganda.
Yes, very much so. Now we have Maria Menounos.
Oh, God.
As we talked about last time. We had a whole rant session about her in the first one. If you don't know who that is,
go watch a movie.
Go to the movie theater. Go a little early. We worked at a movie theater and it's still very triggering to us.
Yep.
So they also decided, let's start making some puppets. And so they kind of created like these puppets for the commercials as well. Mm-hmm. They borrowed a camera and experimented with stop action animation. They would shoot footage of animal drawings and use different techniques until it looked like they were moving, which is fun, but probably takes a lot of time. And these were hand-drawn animations as well. Hand-drawn cell animations is what they were called. So cartoons at the time were very silent, and there are a lot of animated cartoons at movie theaters. And so he knew this, and he was like, I can work with that. I'll make my own silent film. And that was kind of his like ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Like eventually he wanted to be able to create his own silent film. So he decided to recruit a guy named Fred Harmon as his first employee. This guy knew a lot about business, and he was also really good at drawing. So they were like, let's be partners. Mm-hmm. And they called his cartoons Laugh-O-Grams. He recruited people to start Laugh-O-Grams Company as well. So there was like a whole team behind it. Mm-hmm. And in this team, they basically made modernized fairy tales like Puss in Boots. They would take the original story of Puss in Boots and then show him in more modern situations, like him going to the movie theater, basically. So it was like a way to like relate to the fairy tales.
Yeah.
And then to see them in a new perspective.
Okay.
So, yeah. One of his brothers ended up getting tuberculosis.
Oof.
It was Roy. Yeah. But then his brother Herbert moved the family because of postal service. So he actually ended up moving out as well. So then it was like, okay, now it's Walt and then Elias and Flora. Because I think Roy was just like, I need to go take care of my health. Like, I don't know where he went, but
I'm going to Colorado.
Yeah.
It's dry there.
Right. So then, yeah, Elias and Flora were like, yeah, let's go join Herbert. And so Walt's just like, okay. And they just moved to Portland. So Walt was like, bye guys. And he was upset that his family left him because it's kind of like, what about me? But once you have grandkids, the other children don't matter as much. That's just how it goes sometimes. All right. So then in 1922, he ended up quitting the ad company. And he finally had the official Laugh-O-Grams Company. So it was called Laugh-O-Gram Films. And at this point, he's only 20 years old.
Dang.
So he's already done a lot to get his career started.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, cartoons were very popular. And so he was able to acquire his own studio because they were like such a rising thing that was like so many people were interested in it.
Yeah.
And so they were like, yeah, make more cartoons. Let's go. So he ended up hiring a bunch of employees, including Iwerks and Herman's brother, Hugh. They did a series of 7-minute films, and they were fairy tales that combined both live action and animation. They called it Alice in Cartoonland.
Wow.
And yes, that's where it all began with Alice.
My girl.
Yeah. Yeah. So Pictorial Films told Walt and the boys that they would make $11,000 as the year went. And they were like, yeah, we got this. We're going to make so much money. They went out of business.
Oof. That's hard.
Yeah. Because in 1923, they were burdened with debt and Disney was forced to claim bankruptcy.
Oof.
I declare bankruptcy. So then he was like, I don't know what to do now. So I guess I'm going to go to LA with Roy. So he's like, hey, Roy, you feeling better? Cool. So, hey, I'm going to move in with you. But also, Oob's here. He brought his friend to Oob Iwerks to come live with them. And they all ended up working together. So Walt was like the director. He wrote the stories. He drew animations. Roy was like the accountant, the one behind the scenes, the cameraman. Oob was just like the one that's like, yeah, let's do that. Or like would give other ideas.
The hype man.
Yeah, exactly. They all needed each other in some way. So they began the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio, later changing its name to Walt Disney Studios, which was Ray's idea. Yeah. And the first deal that they had was with a New York distributor, and it was Margaret Winkler, who was the one that decided to distribute the Alice cartoons. All the Alice cartoons used one girl, and this would obviously be renamed to Alice's Wonderland, and then Alice in Wonderland. So it was about Alice and her journeys in Wonderland. And people were like really interested in this. They're like, oh, this little girl going on so many adventures. Iconic.
I love it.
Yeah. So they worked in a small store and they started to produce more and more of these 7-minute cartoons of Alice's Wonderland.
I'm surprised it took them that long to actually make the Alice in Wonderland cartoon.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
But it was so good.
Alice in Cartoonland finally premiered in theaters June 1924. So like they were doing little shorts, but then this was like the first like full movie, basically. Margaret Winkler, which if you remember, she's the New York cartoon distributor that signed the contract for the Alice series. She married this guy who kind of ruined it all. His name is Charles Mintz. And Mintz was not a fan of the Alice series. And so he was like, you know what? Why don't you end it? And she's like, you're right. It's actually really bad.
What?
So then they ended it.
Trash.
I know. I'm like, Charles, you jerk.
Charles.
Mintz was like, there's so many live action and animated movies that you put together. Because, like, in the Alice in Cartoonland, like, it was an actual girl in a cartoon land. Okay. I don't know if I explained that.
I think I've seen pictures on that.
Yeah. So Mintz was like, why not just do a fully animated movie? And so he came up with Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, which was distributed by Universal. And it was like, Universal was the first major company, so it was pretty big. But he contracted the shorts at $1,500 each. $1,500 each.
Dang.
So, made pretty good money off of that. And Walt was getting a cut because he was technically working with the same company. So, in February 1928, Oswald was up for renew. And they were like, we want another one. Like, we love Oswald. Let's just keep making them, right? Mintz took over to produce all of it by himself and got rid of Disney.
Oh.
He was like, I don't need you guys. I got this. So Oswald was going somewhere else and it was stolen because Disney kind of owned some of the rights, you know?
Yeah.
But because Mintz owned the rights to the actual character,
There's
won.
Nothing that can do.
Yeah. So that's out the window. Okay, in 1925, Walt ended up hiring an ink artist named Lillian Bounds and began dating her. They ended up getting married in Idaho, where she was from, on July 13th, 1928, I think is what it says, but it looks like a 5 and an 8 combined. I'm guessing it was 1928. So at this point, Disney was 24 years old and Lillian was 26.
Ooh.
Yeah. Older women.
Love it.
In the late 1920s, the studios broke from their distributors and created cartoons featuring what we know as Mickey Mouse and Friends. Classic. But originally, Mickey's name was Mortimer, and Lillian and him were having a conversation in a train once, and of course they were in a train. And Walt was like, oh, I have this genius idea of this mouse. He's like pretty crazy. Like he has a great personality. He's very like welcoming and exciting. And his name's Mortimer. And she was like, that's literally a terrible name. She was like, why not name him Mickey? And he's like,
that's like a nickname, isn't it?
Yeah. And so he was like, oh, okay.
Thank you, Lillian.
Can you imagine Mortimer Mouse? God. So once he came up with Mickey Mouse, he was like, let's copyright that shit. So that this cannot get stolen from me. So he copyrighted Mickey Mouse, but he still couldn't sell cartoons without a distributor. So in 1928, sound became the newest thing in film technology. So now we're breaking away from the silent films and we're adding sound effects. Lots of fun sound effects, lots of laugh tracks in the background, all the classic things.
The band.
Yes, yes. Disney was like, you know what? This is a perfect opportunity since this is brand new. I'm going to do it better than anyone else. He said that. And he did it. So he was the original voice of Mickey because he could not find someone who could do the voice exactly how he was picturing it. And he voiced Mickey, and then they would add sound effects to the background, basically. So on November 18th, 1928, Steamboat Willie was the first cartoon with sound. Yay! Our little claps. It received great reviews, and everyone fell in love with who we know now as Mickey Mouse.
Oh.
And Mickey Mouse, fun fact, was actually drawn by Oob Iwerks. So
really?
When I say they were a good team.
It's a really good team.
Yeah. So Walt had a very specific voice for Mickey. And a lot of people think like the reason why he was so particular was because he wanted Mickey to foreshadow who he actually was.
Yeah.
And his like personality. And a lot of people were like, wow, Walt, it's basically you as a mouse. So when you look at Mickey Mouse and you see a lot of movies that he's in and stuff, just remember that like there's a big piece of Walt in there.
Yeah.
So I love that.
I love it.
And I love the freaking statue where he's holding Mickey's hand. Okay,
it's quality.
Yeah, it is.
It's quality.
In 1929, we had the Skeleton Dance. And these were basically just cartoons that he made with a little band in the background, little sounds. He also created the Three Little Pigs. And this was also during the time where he created the characters Donald Duck, Goofy, and Pluto. So eventually, with his career going really well, he was like, I think I want some kids now. So he was like, hey, Lillian, should we have some babies? And she's like, yeah, sure. Unfortunately, they had 2 miscarriages, so they were off to a little rocky start with all of that. And they would just keep trying, basically, until they were able to have a baby. So while that was going on, in 1931, Technicolor was introduced. And no more black and white. We're going to add that beautiful color. Disney basically created a cartoon called Flowers and Trees. So now he can finally use his flower drawings because it looks very similar. Just saying. And he held the rights to a lot of things in Technicolor for 2 years. And he was using it as an opportunity to get out there. So anything he would make, he's like, copyright, copyright, copyright. This is all me. I'm a brand now. Iconic. And I'm glad he did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the Flowers and Trees, you see a lot of colorful natures with human faces. So he was doing the like flowers with human faces, trees with human faces. He might have been high. Just kidding. But this was his first ever Oscar. He won it for Best Cartoon. And this was actually the first Oscar ever given to someone for a cartoon.
That's wild.
Yeah. And then finally on December 18th, 1933, Diane Marie Disney was born. So it took him about 3 years to have their first baby. And he loved his family. He was always very sweet to his kids. But he was known to not be the nicest to his workers. He was just very stern. And he didn't like to praise his team. So he never would give compliments. He would always say, like, I hear. So, like, I hear you were doing a great job on this project.
I've seen that in, like, videos.
Yeah, he wouldn't just say, like, wow, you're doing really great.
Yeah.
It's like he had to hear it. It's like, Walt, stop.
It's like, what are you doing?
I know. just like, give him a compliment. During this time, Disney was working on a long version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, because before this, it was just like a short 7-minute video. And everyone was like, more! Come on, give us the whole story! So he's like, okay. Unfortunately, during this time, Lillian had another miscarriage, so they decided to pursue adoption. They ended up adopting Sharon May Disney on December 21st, 1936, just a couple months after she was born. So they had her for her whole life.
Yeah.
He was really focused on creating Snow White, and he really wanted to focus on the details. One of those details being the color. and all the things he could do with like the birds and the nature and everything, but also the sounds. Because sound effects were so big, and that's what people were interested in. Like, we didn't have crazy effects that we have nowadays, but you could always count on sound effects. So, like, slurping the soup, something simple like that. He wanted that to be, like, a really strong sound.
Yeah.
And people didn't think that anyone would be able to sit through a super long cartoon. Like, at this point, they were all shorts.
Yeah.
They were like, how is anyone going to sit through? I don't even know how long Snow White is, like an hour. And
yeah, it's not
very super
long.
long, but for that time, it was long. Like what a 3-hour movie is now. So he was like, whatever, I'm going to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. It cost $14 million for him to produce the movie.
Holy shit.
So luckily, he had a lot of people on his team and a lot of people who believed in him and studios that were like, we'll help you. Mm-hmm. And so finally on December 21st, 1937, Snow White premiered. It was a sensation. Despite the Great Depression happening at the same time, it earned $416 million. Jeez. And it won 8 Oscars.
That's wild.
Watching it now, it's like, huh. Like, it was a good movie, don't get me wrong, but like compared to what we have.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like interesting. But I mean, when you see something for the very first time,
it's a completely different feel.
Yeah. So people were begging for another Snow White. Like, please make another one. We loved it. And he's like, or I could just make movies that are similar, that are also long. And they're like, oh, I guess you could do that too. So he then created Pinocchio in 1940, Fantasia in 1940, Dumbo in 1941, and Bambi in 1942. So he was just on a roll during those years, just like popping them out. Creative genius.
Really knows how to make depressing movies.
I know.
But I mean, it was World War II.
True. Yeah, true. It really goes with the climate.
Yeah.
So his whole family now moved in Los Angeles because obviously.
Yep.
And Flora, his mother, ended up dying in the house because of a gas leak in 1938.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But the year after that, in December 1939, there was a new campus for Walt Disney Animation Studios that was opened in Burbank. So now we had like a full-on animation studio. Yeah. And for Fantasia, it costs over $2 million just to add the music and the colors.
Damn.
So that movie was very, very expensive.
Watching it,
yeah.
I can believe that. There's so much going on in that movie.
Oh, so much. Oh my God. It's like you're on an acid trip.
Literally.
Unfortunately, Pinocchio and Fantasia weren't as successful as Snow White due to the start of World War II. Mm-hmm. It cut off 110% of revenues. So what they were expecting to get, it was like, it tanked.
You would have thought that you would be a little bit more mindful for what was going on at the time. But I mean, if they didn't do it, we wouldn't have these movies.
Yeah.
So I'm not upset about that.
But one good thing that came out of the war during, like, when he was making these movies is the Three Little Pigs.
Really?
People thought that movie was revolutionary, and they loved a song, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? They love that song.
Oh my God.
A lot of people call that the theme of World War II. I'm like, are you comparing the wolf to, like, everyone coming to get them?
I'm guessing the Big Bad Wolf is like Germany.
Yeah. That's what I'm guessing.
He's trying to blow all their houses down.
Yeah. I guess it makes sense to a war.
then the U.S. is like the huntsman who kills a Big Bad Wolf.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. That song's a banger. Not gonna lie. Okay. So with Bambi, they ended up using real animals to like help know how to draw them and pose them.
That's a good idea.
How do you use a deer though?
I mean, they're probably, observing, just watching their movements and stuff. And I mean, they still do that with like the movies that they make now. Yeah. Like with Moana, they went to like Pacific Islands, Hawaii, just to really get the vibe of like the culture, how like the people like use the land and stuff like that. And then the water, like you got to do your research.
Right. Because otherwise it's just a shit show.
Yeah. So, I think I saw, I don't know where I watched it, but it was like shorts of them like drawing like animals and stuff to get the flow of like how they were going to do it for Bambi.
Yeah. I remember watching it too. I don't know what documentary it was.
I don't know either.
Because I remember the thumper, like the thumping when they drew that. But yeah, it's really fascinating. It makes sense. But yeah, a huge conversation when they were creating Bambi was, how is the mom going to die?
Oh my God.
Because they knew they wanted to kill the mom. But they didn't know how.
That's
of course, go with the hunter. I watched that movie recently and just bawled my eyes out.
Literally. It's so sad when he's just like, Mom.
Yeah,
You're
Mom.
like, oh.
She's gone. Oh my God. No, at first they were going to show a full-on violent scene, though, and like show her bleeding out.
Oh my God, imagine.
Yeah. It would have been very disturbing.
They would definitely have to put a sensitivity warning on that now.
I know, right? They already do on so many. But Walt was like, we're not going to do that. Let's not. We're not going to get sued. Scar these children.
Let's traumatize them.
Yeah. The studio is now in debt just because of the world, basically.
Yeah.
And so the movie studios began unionizing. The Disney workers wanted to unionize, and they demanded better pay and working conditions. Disney believed his company had been infiltrated by communists.
Oh my God.
But finally, after numerous heated meetings, lots of strikes, and negotiations, Disney became unionized. And it left Disney feeling disillusioned and discouraged and betrayed.
Dude, what'd you expect?
Yeah. So Dumbo came out, and then his father died. Oh, God. Like, same time.
Oh, man.
And now he doesn't have a company. Lots of shit going on here. Most of the workers quit. They're like, bye, I can't do this. And it would take years for the company to actually fully recover.
It makes sense. I feel like the mid 40s were very like low key.
Yep. Everyone disappears for a bit. And then Pearl Harbor happened, and the U.S. joined the war. And so the U.S. government was like, hey, Disney, I know you have some free time now. Can you produce some training films using a lot of your popular characters for men going into the war? So there's like Mickey Mouse war training videos and stuff.
Freaking propaganda.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's why you did it during that time, because you wanted to help as much as you could.
Right. It's like, you got to do something. Yeah. People thought he was very naive with a lot of his politics. But he was like, he thought he was very even-minded, and he didn't have a prejudice. And a lot of people described him saying he didn't have a prejudice. There was a big rumor that he was racist, and a lot of people considered him to be racist. But people who knew him were like, no, he's not.
It's like
right.
He says, she said.
Right.
Hearsay.
Yeah, and you watch a few of the old movies, and you're like,
You have to think that's like a whole animation team doing that too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just him. No. It was definitely like the norm back then. And
I mean, that's what everybody does, is that they always look at just one person because they're the face
one in
of
charge,
something.
Yeah,
they never look at like the behind of like everybody else involved.
Right. We don't know the conversations that went into that. We don't know.
Yeah, and this is not just for Disney. This is like in general. It's like a lot of people, when you see it like on social media, they're just blaming this one person when it's literally a whole team that caused it.
Very true. So after the war, he turned to more live action films. He's like, let's try something new. So he created Song of the South. That came out in 1946. It's 30% animation and 70% live action. So it's like he still kept some animation in there, but he was kind of experimenting with more live action, basically.
That inspired Splash Mountain, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Zippity Doo Dah was named the best movie song of 1946.
Huh.
Yeah. Doo-dah. This is random, but in 1947, he made a documentary about Alaskan seals named Seal Island. Came out in 1948, and it won an Academy Award for the best documentary. He really was just experimenting.
Literally all over the place.
And then after the war, the money from the UK had to stay there. And so they created Treasure Island.
Love
They
it.
could use that area. And it was the first fully live action Disney movie.
Well, he was really into that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I respect it. You know, like I'm like, I know this was like a revolutionary movie.
Yeah.
But watching it, because I rewatched like the Disney movies, you know. I haven't even finished that, but like rewatching that, I was
they
like,
even go into detailed on behind the attraction when they cover Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
They were talking about Treasure Island.
Because it really created the foundation for how we see pirates.
Yeah.
Because like nobody thought of them as like wearing those crazy hats.
Yeah.
And the eye patches until that movie came out.
Dude, best show ever. If you guys
it's
want,
so good.
I'm going to talk a little bit about it next week.
The food episode.
I know. Season 2 was amazing.
Oh, it was so good.
I'm ready for season 3.
I know. We're like their biggest fans. I love that show. It's so cool.
It's so good.
All right. He hated when people called him Mr. Disney. He wanted to just be called Walt. We're on a first name basis, bro.
Literally in my notes I put, we're going to talk about Mr. Disney.
Oh shit, you better scratch that out.
I better.
He's going to come back
and
haunt you.
Oh, God.
So, because Walt loved trains, he basically laid out a railroad track by their family house, like in their backyard. And he asked someone to build a mini train for him. It was a treasured experience. So, yeah, like he was literally like, I have money now, so let's just make a train in my backyard. And like everyone in town can come ride it.
Imagine trying to sell your house that has a train in the backyard.
This is our favorite part of the house. A train? Yeah.
Instead of walking across the yard, we can just go on my train.
Yeah, exactly. But his like daughters were obsessed with it.
Oh,
like,
I
this
bet.
is so fun. He was really famous at this time. His name was very well known, but he always kept his taste very plain and simple. He would bring canned foods to big events. He didn't like a fancy meal. He just wanted to eat out of a can.
Ew.
What show? I think it was in Behind the Attraction. In the food episode, they were talking about his food taste.
Yeah.
He made a freaking list of foods that he liked to give to his wife. And he's like, this is what every meal should be. One vegetable. I was like...
It was like all portioned out.
Yeah. He's like, I need a meat, a potato. like, dude, chill. So yeah, he gave his wife a menu that she could use to cook for him.
Oh my God.
Poor Lillian.
I know.
I'd be like, you better shove that up your ass.
Literally.
He loved a classic home-cooked meal. And with only one vegetable. He made that very clear.
No mixed veggies. I won't eat it.
Yeah. He's probably that person that's like, what's in this? Oh, gross. Give me a can of beans. He was actually one of the first people to use television as an entertainment medium. And he had popular TV series like Zorro and Davy Crockett. He had a whole show for Davy Crockett. They were extremely popular. One day, he took his kids to go ride a carousel. And he was like thinking, you know, as he's watching them, he's like, I feel like, this is just a thought. Like, I feel like we need a new enterprise that should be built where all ages get to have fun. He's like, because my kids are having fun, but I'm just standing here. Lame. So after that, he started observing all the attractions there, everything around him, and he actually made notes. This guy's walking around an amusement park taking notes.
That probably looked really shady.
Right? They're really like, are you good, buddy? He's like,
Are you an inspector or something?
yeah. Point me to your nearest roller coaster. Like,
how many trash cans do you have?
yeah, exactly. Oh, what a classic businessman. So he was like, should I stop the film business and go into the amusement park business? Like, those were his two biggest passions. So he was like, maybe I should. He actually ended up creating WED Enterprises. WED stands for Walt Elias Disney. So just his name. And this is how he organized his idea. And he then was like, let's just call it Disneyland. Because that's easier to say than WED. Can you imagine if it was called WED Enterprises?
Oh, God.
So now we know it as Disneyland. And this was like his first design center, his sandbox. This is when he started putting together some ideas. And he never really saw it as like a possibility. He was just kind of like messing around, just seeing like maybe we can figure something out. But then he was like, no, I'm actually going to do this. And then he started traveling everywhere and trying to find a good place to put Disneyland. So he looked at 10 different sites, and then he went for the very first one he saw, and moved away from the freeway a little bit, and then found the wonderful land of Anaheim. Oh. Woo, 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 woo. So in 1950, he actually created an Alice infomercial, which was 1 hour long. But this was ahead of his time because they didn't have infomercials.
It was an infomercial and it was an hour?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I don't know what it was about. But okay. And he was feeling really confident because Cinderella was coming out and there was a lot of hype for it. And he was like, let's do this Disneyland thing. So he was like, I need a sketch artist, even though he could literally draw, but he needed like an architecture type person. So he like hired someone who would basically draw out all of his imagination. So imagine him just being like, okay, there's a main street and a castle. And they're like, a castle, sir? Like a full castle? Yes! Write it down. Like, can you imagine that conversation? Oh, and there's going to be a lot of different lands. Like the artist is probably like,
what is going on?
Yeah, can you slow down, sir? So this was like happening. They were revising the pictures and sketching all of his crazy ideas out. Everything that came to mind was drawn. And Alice in Wonderland came out in 1951. Whoop, whoop. Peter Pan came out in 1953.
What?
And Roy actually reached an agreement where ABC gave Disney a $500,000 investment in Disneyland in exchange for a weekly Disney TV series called Disneyland. So he was basically smart to shoot it in color because people were like seeking those color shows. And everyone was really interested. It basically showed the process of creating Disneyland and like behind the scenes. And so people knew it was going to happen. And they're like, oh my God, what? Is this really going to happen? And then the Mickey Mouse Club came out because people wanted more Disney. So it happened. And basically Walt's big idea about Disneyland is that it will never be finished. And obviously it still follows that today because they're making changes constantly.
They're trying to put an Avatar land in there. What the fuck?
That's bullshit.
Dude, freaking Tokyo Disney is getting a Rapunzel land.
I know.
And Peter Pan. It looks so cool.
Wait, Peter Pan too?
Yeah, they're adding to like that whole fantasy area.
Oh my God.
But I've seen like a preview of like a ride for Tangled.
Yeah.
Dude, it looks so freaking cool. I'm going to have to go to Tokyo.
Oh, for sure. The thing is like I want to go to every park.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm scared to go to one and then like they add something really cool.
Yeah.
A year later and I'm like, no. So,
dude, Tokyo just knows how to do Disneyland.
They really do.
They're in the top.
I'm excited for that one.
Top tier.
While creating Disneyland, Walt never ran out of ideas. He just kept them coming. And even like the people helping him were like, I don't know if we can do that. He's like, we're going to do it. Write it down. And then in 1954, his daughter Diane got married and had a baby very quickly. And in July 1955, after 30 years of marriage, right after they celebrated, Disneyland would open on July 17, 1955 in Anaheim, California. I'm not going to talk about the opening because that's you. You will talk about it. So I'm going to talk about his life continuing. So in 1961, he finally had a boy grandson named after him. So he was like, it's my man, Walt Jr. And then in the mid-1960s, he made electronic people and animals. So what we see in a lot of rides nowadays, but also like the Lincoln was iconic to people. They're like, oh my God, it's Abraham Lincoln.
He was really into presidents.
He really was.
I don't know why.
No.
But
that was his way of being like, I'm American. I guess. I don't know. Then he created It's a Small World in 1966. Now the song's in my head. Great. And then Mary Poppins ended up being his last motion picture film that he created. He basically would read the book to his daughters, and then he was like, I want to make it a film. There's a whole movie about it. What is it called? Saving Mr. Banks.
Oh, yeah.
In 1964, Mary Poppins premiered, and it was nominated for 13... Oh, it was nominated for 13 Academy Awards, and it won 5 of them.
Damn.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So with this success and $44 million to purchase the land for another theme park in 1965. They're like, let's use this as inertia. Get it going. So in October 1966, basically they described his plans of building an experimental prototype community of tomorrow, also known as Epcot. And it would be 5 times the size of Disneyland, and it would include shopping, entertainment, venues, and hotels. So he's like, let's take Disneyland and make it even bigger. But-choom. And he liked Florida because of all the tourists that were there, the land that was there, and it was cheap.
Dirt cheap.
Yeah. So Walt helped build a ski resort as well during this time. So he was just like, he didn't stop. I don't know why he chose to do that, but I guess,
why not?
Yeah. He was actually talking at a press conference during this time when he was getting older, and people said he was looking really sick and like he wasn't doing well, and he could not stop coughing. And so he was like, all right, I guess I need surgery for this because like I'm rich, they'll help me out, right? Mm-hmm. So they ended up finding a lump the size of a walnut in his throat. Ugh. So he immediately went into surgery, and then the doctors ended up giving him 6 months to 2 years to live. He actually ended up collapsing in his home and was admitted to the hospital on December 15th, 1966. And at 9:35 a.m., he died from an acute circulatory collapse. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
But he ended up being buried in Glendale, California. Now, after Walt died, Roy continued with Disney World, and it opened in October 1971. Roy ended up dying 2 months later. So...
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that they didn't keep it in the family business with Walt's grandson.
Right.
But, I mean, they probably just had no interest in it.
Yeah. True. And then on December 15th, 1997, 31 years to the day of Walt's death, Lillian ended up suffering a fatal stroke and died the next day.
Oh.
So, like, they pretty much died on the same day. I mean, she died the next day, but
yeah,
December 15th, December 16th is crazy. And, like, the amount of times I've said December in this episode, it was, like, such a month for them.
Yeah.
You know? So, he actually has some, like, tea in his family that ended up happening later. So, Diane and her husband, Ronald Miller, had 7 children. So, they had Christopher, Joanna, Tamara, Walter, Jennifer, Patrick, and Ronald Miller Jr. Mm-hmm. And Sharon and her first husband, Robert Brown, ended up adopting a daughter named Victoria Disney. Sharon's second husband, so she ended up getting remarried. Mm-hmm. She married Bill Lund, and he was a real estate developer who actually ended up scouting the 27,000 acres in Orlando. Mm-hmm. That became Disney World. They had twins in 1970 named Brad and Michelle. But after Sharon died in 1993, her trust became available to her 3 children. And it included a caveat that allowed her ex, Bill Lund, and her sister, Diane, to withhold funds if they could show that Sharon's children couldn't properly manage money. So this led to accusations of conspiracy, mental incompetence, incest was even a theory.
What?
I don't know why. But yeah, they were kind of just going crazy on the conspiracies. And this led to an ugly 2-week trial in December 2013.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, that's his family tea. I wanted to end with some famous quotes by him. This is one of my favorites. I love Mickey Mouse more than any woman I have ever known.
Oh my God.
I don't know if he's saying he loves Mickey more than the women, or if he's saying he loves Mickey more than the women do. What? But I like just not knowing which one he means. Another one of his quotes: never do anything that someone else can do better. That one's kind of like harsh, I feel like. But this is a good one, okay? This one really sums it up. Everybody in the world was once a child. We grow up, our personalities change, but in every one of us, something remains of our childhood. And that is a legacy of Disney.
Yay.
So that is the life of Walt Disney.
Dude's wild. Like,
yeah.
You gotta appreciate for what he created. There's definitely some things that he could have done better, like
For
really
sure.
appreciate his workers more.
Yes,
Why do
yes.
you think they unionized?
Right.
Because you didn't appreciate him. But then, like, everybody has so much, like, all the people that worked with him, that were really close with him, had so much respect for him.
Uh-huh.
So it's just like, it's a two-way street.
And to see his legacy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you kind of have to respect him.
But I mean, like, seeing it now, just so much controversy with it. Just seeing where Disney is at right now, I think he would be like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Disney movies have not been doing great in the last few years.
I know.
I think it's just...
They're taking different approaches.
They're removing love out of it. And I feel like that was a really big thing for Disney. Even through romances, family love, I feel like they're really focusing on friendship, but isn't bad. But removing like love from it, I feel like that is a really big thing that I feel like even our generation has, like the last, like since COVID or even since like 2015, love just hasn't been there. Like from rom-coms to movies, just to stuff. And they've removed that.
Well, and they're so focused on remakes.
Yeah.
Or like sequels. It's like...
Yeah. It's like your creativity is not being there because the ones that you are being creative about, you're trying to force your agenda or force something to them instead of just making it entertaining and fun and just making it enjoyable.
Yeah.
I thought Elemental was amazing. I thought they did a really good job.
That one was really good.
And that one was kind of brushed under the rug because I don't think they promoted it as much as like they did Wish or even that Big Strange World. That movie flopped terribly, and I feel like they gave that more attention than they did Elemental.
Yeah. I feel like they were expecting Wish to be bigger.
Yeah.
But watching it, I was like, the music is...
It's very repetitive.
Yeah, but I like how they referenced all the Disney stuff to like celebrate the anniversary. Like, I get that.
And I think that's what the whole premise of the movie was.
Right.
But I don't know. I feel like Lin-Manuel Miranda made all the music the same. And I think that's what has made it uninteresting for me. Because I'm like, all this music sounds exactly the same. All of like the ballads and stuff. Like all the music that he's been doing for the live actions, they all sound very similar and not unique.
Yeah.
And I feel like Disney is losing their unique quality to them that made it, like Walt and his team, the Imagineers, made it so unique during its prime.
For sure.
And different. It really made each story its own self, and the music was its own self, where I feel like now
it's just trendy, like whatever's
trending.
Like,
it's just like you're not taking, and I think that's why I appreciated Elemental, because it took it in a new direction of what we've seen, and it made it
so good,
unique. And it really brought out the characters, like different characters and stuff. And I feel like with them just trying to force something or just, and I really like Turning Red too, because I like the aspect of it.
That one did not do well. But I love that movie.
It's so good because it brought in the reality of being a preteen.
Yeah.
Of being like a teenager in the early 2000s.
I thought Soul was so freaking good.
So Soul was very
so
good.
Underrated.
It is.
I love that. Like, I love when Disney does the deep psychological stuff, like Inside Out. Like, oh, I love that. I can't wait for Inside Out too.
I saw the full preview for that one, and I think they have a good one on their hands. Anxiety, embarrassment, boredom, and envy. Those are very big qualities when you're a teenager, because we all felt it.
June. Woo! And Moana 2 this year too.
I'm so glad that he's not doing the music for that.
Me too. Oh my god.
I'm sorry. Like
No, it's his music gets very repetitive.
The same.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was great at first, but
He did well enough with Encanto.
yeah.
I think he's good, you know?
Yeah.
And Hamilton, of course, but like a lot of his music just, it's not Disney to me. It's not Disney.
No. So I'm excited to see what these new music writers do.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Lyricists.
They're really great.
Mm-hmm.
So
Where can you find us?
you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at History of the Podcast. You can also email us at historyofthepodcast@gmail.com and give us a nice rating if you would feel so inclined. That'd be great. We'll see you next week for our Disneyland episode.
Yay!